You are Locked On Wolves Postcast, part of Locked On Minnesota on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
T-Wolves lose back-to-back to Portland? Final score, 106-98. What is happening right now? Back in the lab, back at it. Another T-Wolves Postcast episode right here, Locked On Sports Minnesota Network. Your team every day. Jack Borman, give him a follow at JRBorman13. And Jack, plenty to break down tonight, including all the offensive woes, plus Rob Dillingham's first real action tonight. But first, quick reminder, tonight's episode brought to us by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. That's LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Boy, I can't wait for the comments to flood in throughout this one. I feel like I'm having deja vu, Jack. Like we're about to come on here. We're about to talk about the same exact stuff we did last night. Offensive woes, Brick City, Ant 0 for 9 from 3. They shot less than 18% from 3 tonight. Transition basketball was atrocious. Where do you want to start? Because this was ugly again. And people aren't happy when you lose back-to-back to the Portland Trail Blazers, a team that is missing some of their best starters. So what's your 8 topics first and foremost?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, just to provide some context, Portland, again, missing Anthony Simons, DeAndre Ayton, Rob Williams, Matisse Thybulle, 4 guys that would likely be in their rotation if they're all healthy. And this is the 3rd straight loss for the Timberwolves, all to teams under 500. They did not lose 3 games in a row all year last year. I don't think they lost back-to-back games to sub-500 teams last year. So certainly a bummer for the Timberwolves when you consider that context. And yeah, I think on some level too, you got to shout out Shaedon Sharpe and Donovan Clingan for both playing really, really well. Those are 2 extremely talented prospects that were drafted really highly for pretty obvious reasons with what they're able to do tonight. I think Shaedon Sharpe had a career high 33 points in this game, showed why he's such an explosive athlete with that crazy putback dunk. Made some tough shots off the dribble, made his open catch and shoot threes. A guy who I think has endless potential on the offensive end of the floor. And then Donovan Clingan, you saw what he was able to do on the defensive end of the floor with 12 rebounds and 8 blocks for Clingan, which tied his career high at UConn. And so you got to give those guys credit, right? They were down some key contributors, and Clingan was thrust in there and had 2 fouls in the first 2 or 3 minutes of the game, and then really stabilized and found a rhythm and played really, really well, especially on the defensive end of the floor. But yeah, I mean, you thought it looked good there for a minute in the middle part of that 3rd quarter when Anthony Edwards hits a pair of free throws, gets that pick 6 in transition, and then has a really nice drive after getting a defensive rebound on the other end to score. It's a personal 6-0 run as part of a 12-2 larger Timberwolves run that had them take a 7-point lead. And you're thinking, all right, let's just get this thing to the finish line, keep playing with some energy. And it was one of those kind of classic 2-minute ant avalanches that can just, I guess, keep you afloat and get you to the finish line like we saw so often last season. And, the Wolves just gave it right back. Portland closed on a 10-2 run to tie it at 76 after the 3rd quarter. And then at the start of the 4th quarter, you just have that avalanche that was really brought on by Clingan's defense. And then you had Denny Avdia knock down a 3 and then make a nice dump off to, I think it was Banton in transition to go up 5. And they just never really looked back from there. I thought the Timberwolves defensively did a really good job of scratching and clawing to try to get it back within 5 and then hold Portland down enough. But I thought Nickeil Alexander-Walker and Jaden McDaniels were both really, really strong defensively in this game. And I don't think you can really pin much of anything on those guys for the way that they played and the way that they battled. But the number one story obviously is the 3-point shooting for the Timberwolves, for them to shoot it the way they did last night and then follow that up tonight with shooting, I think 7 of 39 from 3 was the last number that I had logged. I don't know if they got that's final
exactly right. Yep.
But only 4 players on the Timberwolves made a 3, which was really tough to watch.
And had like 3 of them, right?
Yeah,
I mean, I think Nas, Ant, and DiVincenzo were like 1 for 18, 15, something at one point, and it didn't get any better from there.
Yeah, Nikhil and Nas were a combined 5 of 15, and everyone else was a combined 2 of 22.
Wow.
And Ant and DiVincenzo were 0 of 15 from 3. Um, and DiVincenzo overall from the floor was 1 of 10. And look, if I have seen Dante DiVincenzo do some pretty magical things at Madison Square Garden in big games, especially in the playoffs. So he's certainly capable of doing it. It's just an all-time tough slump for him right now. And we could be forgetting about this in 2 weeks when he's kind of found his level and progressed to the mean a little bit. But I just think when you only have one guy off the bench that's really giving you any type of scoring, it's a tough ask for the rest of the starters when, 3 of your starting 5, your normal starting 5 aren't guys that are going to consistently get you more than 10 or 12 points per game. And you can trust that Ant's gonna keep scoring because I think we know what he's capable of. We know what he's been doing, but then again, puts more pressure on Julius Randle too. So I think even though Dante DiVincenzo, you think, oh, it's just one guy, I think it puts a lot of pressure downstream on the rest of the roster to be able to score. And I think it's just tough to do that. And again, when you have that 3-point shooting the way you do, okay, what do you want to do? You want to go attack the rim. So who's waiting down there for them at the rim? Is Donovan Clingan, who defended the rim extremely well tonight for Portland, and it's just tough when it's like, all right, maybe stop going at that guy over and over and over and over and over again. But if you can't throw it in the broadside, or you can't throw it in the ocean, or hit the broadside of a barn, it's just there's just not a whole lot of options that you have. And I think we'll get into it a little bit later, but. That's when you kind of hope you can get out and run in transition, but it didn't quite happen on the level that the Timberwolves needed it to in order for them to make up just how poorly they shot it from 3 tonight.
Let me ask you this. Who are you most frustrated with? Maybe it's tonight. Maybe it's the last 2 nights, right? These last 2 brutal losses. Maybe it's just in general over the first 12 games. Is it a guy like DiVincenzo, or who are you most frustrated or / maybe just disappointed they're not meeting your expectations so far through this point?
Yeah, I don't know that I would say I'm frustrated just because this team went to the Western Conference Finals last year. They have one of the 5-7 best players in the NBA, so I'm really not super panicked right now. But yeah, I think you'd certainly like to see more from Dante DiVincenzo. I think what he did last season, especially when Randall went down and he had to step up and fill some of that scoring void, playing alongside Jalen Brunson in the backcourt for the Knicks last year was incredible, and he looks like a shell of that player right now. And I think that'll come. He's a guy that has the complete trust of Chris Finch and Anthony Edwards. And when you're playing that way, or when you're playing in a situation like that, I think it's a little bit easier to maybe recover from the slumps or continue to play with confidence. But you can just tell that he's second guessing what he's doing out there a little too much right now. And I think, even at the end of the game when he had that, pretty easy 3-on-1 transition opportunity and just botched it and then gets stripped was, I think, pretty indicative of what he's dealing with right now. But so I think if you can get him going a little bit more, I think that'll really help. And I think, for as consistent as Rudy Gobert has been since he's been here in Minnesota, I think that you would like to see a little bit more consistency from him on both ends of the floor. I think we're seeing him play well in stretches. And then in other stretches, it's just really tough. And I think, again, we talked about it last night, that some of that is not all on Rudy and some of it is on guards letting guys get too deep into the paint, and he's asked to do too much defensively, so he can't defend the rim, rebound, help, do everything out there for this team. But again, I think you'd like to see him be able to hit the offensive glass a little bit more, make things tougher for defenses to come away with rebounds, be more active, as a screener and short roll passer. And I think we just saw him have some tough turnovers when he got the ball tonight. So yeah, I think you'd like to see Rudy be able to be a little bit more active, because I think, again, when you're struggling to shoot it from 3, there's going to be a lot of rebounding opportunities, and in a good way to at least be able to help is to crash the glass more. They had 17 second chance points. They had 13 offensive rebounds, but I think, I think there was more there to be had. So, and then obviously too, you want to see Anthony Edwards shoot better than 0 of 9 from
Just a
three. But
couple.
again, I
Yeah,
think
just
that's
one or
just
two.
more of a single game,
Yeah.
single game sample than
For sure.
anything else.
Yeah, for sure. All right, plenty more deep dive from this one. We got to talk about Rob Dillingham's first real NBA action. That's all coming up right after this. Quick reminder, tonight's episode brought to us by FanDuel. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook and official sportsbook partner of the NBA. Right now, FanDuel's giving you a chance at a huge return, $150 in bonus bets, guaranteed with your first $5 wager. When you get the hunch in the middle of the game, you can go check out the latest stats. You can view live play-by-play and so much more, all on the same page where you place your bets. Again, $150 in bonus bets, guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. Go check it all out over at FanDuel.com. Get in on some NBA future action while you're there. Anthony Edwards MVP odds sitting at 9-1 right now. Still feels like some good value. It's all sitting up over at FanDuel.com. Again, check it all out over at FanDuel.com and get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed with your first $5 wager. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook and official sportsbook partner of the NBA. Okay, no Mike Conley tonight. Got the night off, got a little rest, ice up. That means we finally got our first real taste of our boy, #8 overall pick, Robbie D. I thought the passes were pretty crispy. I mean, dude's just not hitting open shots. Still feels like, obviously, he needs to get some more minutes, get acclimated, get comfortable. But overall, just your thoughts, first real impressions from Rob Dillingham. What'd you think?
Yeah, I thought it was a tale of two stints for Rob Dillingham. I was really pleased with how he looked in that first stint. He looked extremely comfortable playing at the start of the second quarter. Who is he out there with? He was out there with Nickeil Alexander-Walker and Dante DiVincenzo. So they had some other guards out there with him, which I like. And then they also paired him with Naz Reid and Rudy Gobert. So you also have some size to be able to kind of insulate him. I thought he competed really well defensively, which is what you want first and foremost. And then beyond that, I thought that they really settled into just letting him be a playmaker. He had the ball in his hands. He immediately set up 2 wide open threes in the first 2 possessions that he was out there. Obviously you couldn't, obviously wasn't able to knock any of those down. I think he had 5 potential assists. A potential assist for anyone that doesn't know is just a pass that would have been an assist had the shot gone in. But none of those shots went in, unfortunately. So I don't think Rob had any assists. No, he didn't. And had 1 turnover that I don't really fault him for very much in that stretch. But yeah, and then obviously made the corner 3. And what was nice about that was he had the turnover, and then I think it was the very next possession he came down and made a 3 and just kind of, wiped that away. And so you like to see him just be able to bounce back in that way. And then in the third quarter, when he came in, the team was kind of riding, that good wave after Ant had his little explosion, and Randall helped, get the lead out to, 8-9 points, whatever it was at that point. And then Dillingham came in and just really struggled. Didn't really look comfortable. Didn't really do a whole lot with the basketball. Was, dribbled into some situations where the spacing was awkward and turned it over a couple of times. And one of those led to a score that led Chris Finch to call a timeout. And so he only played like 2.5 minutes in that third quarter. So only played 9 total minutes. And I think that's tough for the Timberwolves when you don't have Mike Conley and you're like, all right, this should be the context for Rob Dillingham to be able to get a sizable share of minutes. And for him to only play 9 minutes, Josh Minot only played 4 minutes. So you're replacing Mike Conley's minutes essentially more so with just giving even more minutes to Nickeil and Anthony Edwards is tough. But that's, I think, just more of a comment on how much the rest of the team struggled in this game, that Finch felt like he needed to go with guys that have been in the rotation to try to help them get back in this game. And it's unfortunate that not only do you lose this, or not only does Rob not even get to play all that many minutes in this game, but they don't even win the game either. And you'd say, all right, well, if they lose, that's okay because Rob played 24 minutes or whatever it was, a sizable run, but that just didn't happen. So it was a kind of a lose-lose in that situation. So, we'll see. I don't know what that necessarily means for his minutes moving forward. Obviously, Conley will be back here on Friday, but it's just kind of a bummer, I think, for fans that saw that Conley was out tonight with rest and hoping to see more of Dillingham, and it just didn't happen. And I think what's unfortunate is, you could probably look at Finch and say, or Finch could probably point at you and say, hey, in the higher leverage moments in the third quarter, it didn't look great. So, that's probably not why we're going to get a ton of him moving forward. But that's just the way it goes sometimes in the NBA. And it's unfortunate, but that's just kind of how things are. And we'll see if that changes in the coming weeks. But hopefully we see more of what we saw in the second quarter than what we saw in the third quarter. And I think we will, considering what we've seen in some garbage time minutes and what he showed in the preseason as well.
12 games in, super small sample size, obviously. I'm only going to ask you this because there's a lot of frustration in the chat right now about trading away Cat for the type of production that we've already talked about that they've gotten so far from Julius and DiVincenzo. I know it's way too early to tell, guy, right now, and I'm with you. But I guess what's your thoughts as of today? What's the grade for both teams? How's Cat been in New York, actually? Would you have done anything different if you could go back and change something? Because, again, there's just a lot of frustration that, especially Julius Randle, really, actually, it's about 50-50 split, to be honest. But a lot of frustration right now saying that, the Wolves shouldn't have traded their second-best player, point blank.
Yeah, I think fans also need to understand that ownership was involved in Karl Anthony Towns being traded. That was certainly, I think anyone that would be able to tell you, hey, Glenn Taylor probably didn't want to pay, over $100 million in luxury
salary
tax
cap issues had a lot to do with that as well.
I think this trade was motivated first and foremost by financial reasons, not just this year, but also next year and beyond. So I think that's also part of it. But I think, when you look at the way that Karl's been playing this year, Karl's been awesome. It's been arguably the best he's ever played. He's averaging 24.5 points and 12.5 rebounds, which are both excellent marks. And he's shooting 50, 87 on shooting splits right now. I think he had 46 and 10 tonight. But again, the Knicks lost, and they've been pretty up and down. And even with Cat playing really, really well, I think their defense has still struggled at times, and that's kind of what can happen for the Wolves. But again, I liked the trade based on when they made it, what they got back, and how they're able to add a really nice piece in Dante DiVincenzo that I know has not played very well to this point for the Timberwolves, but is a guy that's on one of the best contracts in the NBA. And again, I think with Julius Randle, for the most part this season, I don't think Julius Randle has necessarily been the problem or been why they've been losing games. I think when they were winning games in the first, month of the season, or 3 weeks of the season, he was doing an excellent job as a playmaker that the Timberwolves really did not have last season, and was a big part of the reason why the Wolves' 3-point rate was way up and why their offensive rating as a whole was way up, because he was creating great shots for his teammates. And I think when that goes out the window, and then you're just left with a spotlight on more of his defensive side, I think that's been a little bit more of a bummer the last 2 or 3 games. But as a whole, and the other part of it too is Timberwolves also got a first round pick that is top 13 protected, I believe, from the Pistons.
That's true. That's a good point.
Via the Knicks. And again, the Pistons have been a 500-ish team. Unfortunately, Ron Holland had a chance to win the game, had 2 free throws in a tie game with a second left and missed both of them. And then the Bucks went on to win in overtime tonight. But again, that pick may convey this year, and that may be really helpful for a team that's trying to retool a little bit on the fly this coming offseason in one of the years where their first round pick is headed to Utah. So I would push back on saying that's a second round pick. It won't convey. I think the Pistons, you look at the way Cade Cunningham has been playing, it would not surprise me whatsoever if that team competes for a play-in spot with him and Jaden Ivey. But at any rate, I would probably give the trade a B- for the Timberwolves to this point. I don't really think that the trade is why they're playing the way that they are. I think that the struggles that Mike Conley's had, that Jaden McDaniels has had offensively and at times defensively, and same goes for Rudy Gobert too, for him not necessarily being a model of night to night consistency so far this season. Again, you have to look at it in a longer view than just the first 12 games of this season. So I would probably go B-. Again, because, Carl's been great for the Knicks, but it's not like the Knicks have just been one of the best teams in the league either. So
Good point.
I certainly think it's a trade that could be a win-win. And again, I think, yes, it has not looked great through 12 games in the aggregate, but I think that the Timberwolves need some time to kind of put some things together and figure it out.
Yeah, 100%. Couple minutes left. Should talk about this Kings game coming up on Friday, what that's going to look like. That's all coming up right after this. Quick reminder, today's episode also brought to us by BetterHelp. When your schedule is packed with work projects and more, it's easy to let your priorities start to slip, even when we know what makes us happy. But when you feel like you got no time for yourself, non-negotiables like therapy, they're more important than ever. If you've been thinking about starting therapy, it's time to give BetterHelp a try. Entirely online, and it's designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited for your schedule. So simple. All you got to do, you go fill out a brief questionnaire, you get matched up with a licensed therapist, and you can switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. Never skip therapy day with BetterHelp. Go visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOn today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOn. Okay, done with the Blazers for a while. Only got one game left versus Portland this year. Feels weird to feel good about that, I guess. But now you got the Kings up next. I like this team, man. Sabonis, Fox, DeRozan, just absolutely demolished Phoenix tonight, 127-104. Just top 2 or 3 bullet points or headlines when you think of this matchup, kind of just top of your head. I feel like this is going to be a great litmus test versus this hungry, feisty team that I assume is going to be in the thick of this Western Conference race come January, February, March.
Yeah, and they had a really gritty win in Sacramento a couple weeks ago. That was a really fun watch that I think was very encouraging to me in terms of the way that they were able to band together when stuff got tough in the fourth quarter. But this looks like a little bit of a different team right now, and that's what happens in the NBA. So I think the Kings have always wanted to play at a really fast pace and get up a ton of threes, and and they've had a bunch of really talented perimeter guys that really thrive in that type of system. And so I think the Timberwolves are going to have opportunities where they're going to be able to turn the ball over and get out and run. And tonight they won the turnover battle 20-14, but Portland won the points off turnover battle 21-12. And so I think if the Wolves can flip that points off turnover battle and really do a better job of converting there in transition, and then continue to attack the glass and put a lot more pressure on Sabonis and force other guys to help Sabonis inside. I think that will certainly help in that regard. So those are a few things that I'm looking at for them. But again, Sacramento's a great offensive team, and they've got a lot of weapons. And I think, again, we've talked about their on-ball defense not necessarily being where it needs to be, and some of their perimeter contain not being great. And De'Aaron Fox is a guy that if you let him get into the paint and let him get to that floater, he's one of the best in the league at being able to convert there. And the same goes for Sabonis, where if he catches the ball, in that short roll area, he's really a capable scorer in there. And then DeRozan as well. If you're matched up with DeRozan on an island, he does an excellent job of getting into the mid range and getting to his spots and utilizing one of the best pump fakes in NBA history to be able to get guys off their feet, draw fouls, and get to the free throw line. So I think individual defense on the perimeter is going to really matter, especially guys that are trying to fight over those screens. And again, I know Mike Conley is going to play. I know Mike Conley will probably be in the starting lineup, but it would be an interesting time to maybe start Nickeil Alexander-Walker and see what he could do on De'Aaron Fox and fight over some of those screens. But again, when you think about the Kings and you think about, some of the guys that they've got on their team, I think that, you can probably understand why, why they play the way that they do, and why, when you look at the guys in their starting five, it's probably understandable to see why you could also have Mike Conley out there and go guard Kevin Huerter and chase around a shooter like we've seen before, and then have maybe ant guard either Keegan Murray or DeMar DeRozan, have Randall to guard the other one, and then put Jaden McDaniels on De'Aaron Fox. But McDaniels has struggled with some of the quicker guards, and so that's why I would maybe advocate for for trying to put Na in there, and then and then maybe put Jaden on DeRozan. But we'll see what happens. I just think, again, the Timberwolves, if they're going to continue to struggle to shoot shots, or excuse me, shoot and make threes, I think that they've got to do a better job of really crashing the glass to create second chance opportunities that should create some more advantageous scoring opportunities. And then the same goes in transition, right? You've got to be able to convert better than they did tonight. I think, they had 19 fast break points, which was great, but I think that they could have had closer to 30 or 35, considering how many opportunities they had and how many dumb turnovers and missed layups and missed wide open threes they had in transition tonight. So that's what I'm looking for. And, who knows? But I mean, Sacramento is a team that can really put a lot of pressure on you offensively, and it'll be a good test for where this defense is at. I know that the defense wasn't necessarily the problem in this one tonight, so you'd hope that they can kind of build off of that one from that perspective. But again, it's a much more talented team than what they've seen the last two nights here in Portland.
Yeah, you shoot like 22% from three. I mean, maybe you win that game instead of 17.9. Who knows? Frustrating all the way around, though. Wolves dropped 2 in a row to Portland. Final score tonight, 106-98. They moved to 6-6 on the year. Again, wildly frustrating night. But as always, huge shout out to all the everydayers out there that always make us your first listen, and all you guys coming in the chat and venting with us game after game. Make sure you like, make sure you subscribe if you haven't already, and make sure you follow all of Jack's work on X at JRBorman13. We got Wolves Kings Friday night, another late one, 9 p.m. tip-off. Catch it right here, though, same time, same place. But until then, signing out.